coming to you live from a graveyard. Welcome to the class war. For those in the struggle, solidarity, know how it is. Today we're going to talk about, I don't know if you've seen this, but a Wall Street Journal writer, Mr. Gabe Rubin, Gabriel T. Rubin. I don't know if that's backwards. I can never tell. It looks backwards to me. The guy who wrote the Wall Street Journal article February 14th, a year ago. A year ago yesterday. In 2023, February 14th, he wrote an article about how much everything costs, the price increase of food, goods. I don't know. It was paywalled, so I could only read the first 3 paragraphs. But Gabriel T. Rubin wrote this article titled, "To Save Money, Maybe You Should Skip Breakfast." What a title. What a clickbaity title. And as of February 3rd, 2024, just about a year later, he posted on his LinkedIn, Gabe Rubin. I lost a job I really loved yesterday when Wall Street Journal's top brass decided to crush the DC bureau. I'm eager to stay in journalism, so please reach out if there are any jobs left in this beleaguered something. I don't have the rest of the quote. You can read it. You can go to his LinkedIn and read it. It's his top post, one of his top posts. So I wonder if Gabe's going to be skipping breakfast now to save money. This is not as somebody who's been through layoffs and watched this stuff happen and personally had to deal with it. I don't know if Gabe has a family. He looks like a young dude, but you never wish this upon anyone. And you hope it's a learning lesson for them. That's the biggest thing. You really hope that they take away a lesson. They go, maybe I shouldn't be spewing rich people propaganda. And we're going to get into the backstory, the Wall Street Journal, who that's owned by, what it essentially is, how it's a BS newspaper now. Ever since 2007. Well, it was BS before that, but you hope that this is a learning experience for Mr. Gabe and that he maybe sees the error of his ways, the error of his ways. But then again, maybe there's so many people like these upper class, there's really no middle class, it's upper class and the working poor, that, this happens to them and they get to go live with mommy and daddy and they don't have to skip meals to save money because mommy and daddy will cook for them because mommy and daddy got a lot of money. They don't have to worry about rent or all that, and they can collect their unemployment while they're living back at home, which is such a different story than I would say a lot of us, or at least me and some of the people that I know. And sometimes when that happens to these people, these wealthier people who lose their job and just get to go home and recoup and recover and have their expenses paid because mommy and daddy have a home and food, and they don't have to do what his Wall Street Journal article says. To save money, he needs to skip breakfast. He doesn't have to do that, and they don't learn lessons. And in that case, let me say this, as a person who fights for the working class, who thinks solidarity is the way forward, everyone coming together, I welcome anybody who stumbles and falls, who joins the struggle, who learns a lesson. Listen, the biggest thing about growing up, maturating, the biggest thing about, becoming an adult is seeing the error of your ways. Like I teach my kids, there's really no mistakes. There's no accidents. It's all learning opportunities. I got such a different mindset than 20 years ago. I've been woke up to so many realities. And really, when you're younger, you're selfish, right? I'm going to get into a personal story real quick because I want to talk about this because it directly is related to this Wall Street Journal list who got laid off. But the other day at work, I'm talking to this woman who loves to tell me about how she was an activist in the 80s and how she, had something to do with recycling and the economics of the environment and all this stuff. And I really try to welcome her into like the reality of today, because I think a lot of people who grew up, 70s, 80s, even 90s, are so out of touch with what the reality of today is. And I don't think she is. I mean, she shared with me she lives in subsidized housing. You know, she's obviously working with me, so ain't all good in the neighborhood. You know, you ain't taking these jobs because you're trying to retire these minimum wage jobs while we make the wealth for the billionaires, and they fight us on just raises that are above inflation, so we can afford to live. If you're just joining, welcome. We're going to talk about Gabriel T. Rubin, the Wall Street journalist who was laid off a year after he wrote the article titled "To Save Money, Maybe You Should Skip Breakfast." But first, I just want to talk about this woman that I work with, because she continually tells me how she wants to be part of the solution. And we were talking the other day, and she keeps kind of debating me on getting paid more. The prices of the goods we sell have gone up, but we don't see any of the money. None of us are getting raises. And she was asking, well, why this place? Why do you want to do it here? I said, well, it's not strictly here. It's across the board. And she was saying, well, I agree with, wages should go up, or, in certain spots. I said, in certain spots. In America, the minimum wage hasn't gone up since 2009. The federal minimum wage has been what it is, $7.25 forever. Meanwhile, the cost of everything goes up. And if you boost that minimum wage, guess what? More people are going to get paid better, including you, higher paid incomes. Jesus. It's always the people who make more are going to say, what about me? I got a college degree. I'm trained. Yes, you're underpaid too. God, is everyone so selfish? They're only concerned about them? It will affect you. Don't worry. By the way, this Wall Street journalist and this lady I'm talking about, they're the definition of selfishness. Okay? Selfishness is when, if it doesn't concern you, you're not concerned about it. If it's not affecting you, then, why should you bother? Why should you care? That's being selfish. That's the simple definition, that you don't think outside of yourself, as long as you're okay. And we're going to get to why I'm bringing that definition up. Because me and this woman at work are talking, and eventually she explains to me, like, her ex-husband's a surgeon, so he makes good money. She used to make six figures, and her kids are doing well. And initially I said, yeah, I used to make six figures too. You think I'm choosing to make $16 an hour right now? $5 after they take out taxes and healthcare? So this isn't a choice. I'm trying to eat. Let my kids eat. That's all I'm doing. I'm not even trying to keep heat on the house. I can't even afford to eat. I'm just trying to eat and survive till tomorrow. So I ask her, why does it matter that you made six figures before? Why are you telling me that your kids are doing well and your ex-husband's a surgeon and he makes top dollar? I said, what does that have to do with the people who are struggling the hardest and us just being able to, like, that's what I want to ask her. I didn't, and I'll tell you why in a second, but my response, I asked a different kid this, and I went over it in a live stream. The people who say, like, oh, we shouldn't be paid more at this job, and they truly believe that. My retort is, so you think people who work full-time, 40 hours a week, should not be able to survive, pay rent, and buy food, and gas, and heat? And they don't answer me. This other kid had no answer. I don't think this woman will have an answer, and it's just confronting what they're saying. It's just rephrasing what they're saying, because there are people that work full-time at my job, and they have to have a second job, and they still live at home. They can't afford their own rent. This is the reality. So I say, at what point do you, as an American, believe that people should work full-time, maybe even two jobs, so more than full-time, and they shouldn't be able to survive? I know a lot of these people that are saying this, like one of them lives at home, wealthy family from Connecticut. This other lady was explaining to me how wealthy she used to be and how wealthy her ex is, and that her kids are doing fine. And when she said, well, so after I said, well, what does that matter? And I explained, like, when I made six figures, that was part of the reason they hated me on the radio. because I believed it didn't matter what I made. I was like, no, people should be paid. If you're working full time, you should be able to afford to live. That's stupid. Isn't that like the basic decency of society? Like you work and you can live. We can't work and live right now. You can't. And just save it to like go to college or get a trade or like why do you have to have these caveats to be able to survive? That's stupid. That's not part of the conversation. And it didn't exist 50 years ago in America. You could just work and live. But as I asked this lady, like, why is all that relevant? Why are you telling me, like, that you're okay? She said, well, because my children are okay. So, I can't. And she walked away. And she just walked away from me. I was like, okay. She initiates these conversations with me. She talks to me about it. I'm not looking to, antagonize or agitate or start this with anyone. She asked me about it. And I'll share my info with anybody. This is why a lot of people don't like me. Because when you look at the stats, like, she didn't like that I told her, what you're saying about people should get paid more. There are a lot of parents, like myself, that work these jobs. And in America, there's, I think, 15 million children food insecure. 1 in 5 kids go hungry every day. 1 in 5 in America. Those are your neighbors, regardless of how well your children are doing. But it's the definition of selfishness. And she says, well, my kids are okay. So and I get it. Some people don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the mental capacity to understand the suffering that happens all around them. And that's also why they want you to be quiet about it. They don't want you to talk to you about it. Or in this case, where this woman, my coworker, once I started pointing out the homelessness, the kids that aren't doing okay, she just walked away. And she came back later and said, I can't, she was like, I want to sit down with you outside of work. And I didn't say nothing, but what do we have to sit down and talk about? You explained your point of view. And this is a lot of people's point of view. That they're doing fine right now. And the people who aren't just didn't work hard enough. But that's not the whole story either, They don't tell you, like, well, maybe they didn't pay for college, or they got to live at home until they could buy a house, or their parents gave them some wealth, or whatever it is. And I just bring that up because that conversation with that woman really was accentuated today when I read this article or read this post that people are sharing, that I've shared, by Gabriel T. Rubin, that he is now laid off, and he's the guy who almost exactly a year ago wrote the article in the Wall Street Journal saying, to save money, maybe you should skip breakfast. Maybe this is maybe this is the spiritual realm trying to show him a learning opportunity, that he shouldn't be pushing rich people propaganda. That his article, what I read, talking about the prices going up, maybe it should included how, like, nobody can afford those prices, and it's not about oil costs and transportation, that it's driven by corporate profits. That's exactly what Time showed us. Time showed us that these corporations on their earnings calls are saying, like, we've never had bigger profits. We're not passing along the cost of goods or transportation. We're just making money, hand over fist. And this Gabriel T. Rubin, part of the reason why, I have compassion, because I've been in his shoes. I feel it. But also, I hope it's a learning experience for him. And if it's not, then it's on, Gabe. Go back to another rich people propaganda outlet and, bootlick. Be a class trader. Because if you got to work, if you're saying, I'm out of work, I need to work, then you're part of the working class. Now, why do I call the Wall Street Journal a propaganda outlet? Well, do you know who the Wall Street Journal is owned by? Rupert Murdoch. Do you know who that is? He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. He owns Fox News. He owns a lot of conglomerates. And why do you think? Let's go into these articles that I was looking up, because it's fascinating. You can go to Investopedia, and it says, who actually owns the Wall Street Journal? I've known this forever, because if I see anybody reading the Wall Street Journal, I go, you reading Rupert Murdoch's newspaper? Jesus. Tells me everything you need to know. But also, the Wall Street Journal is just a paper to tell you what rich person to put your money into. Irregardless if they fail or they take your savings or your retirement fund, That's all this exists to do. Say, invest in us rich people, and maybe we'll reinvest in your communities. No, they won't. Um, so it is owned by Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, and that's what I tweeted at Gabe today. I said, don't worry, Gabe. Rupert Murdoch's doing fine, even though he shut down the DC bureau of the Wall Street Journal. That's what they do. It's not cost cutting, it's just profit making. We got to start using better language. And they go, oh, it's a cost effective measure to lay off an entire city bureau of our reporters and journalists. Wasn't that the point of news, to be local, to be in a certain area, to report on what's happening, like directly affecting that community? They don't care. And it's not cost cutting, it's profit making. That's all it is. They're just wanting to turn a bigger profit. I hope Gabe sees this. Gabe, you need to listen up, bud. Because Rupert Murdoch's doing fine. One of the richest people in the world doesn't need to shut down a bureau. He doesn't. Sorry. And I'll get to my point in a minute of why. They're not struggling for money. Okay? Rupert Murdoch's News Corp put in a takeover bid for Dow Jones and Company in 2007. That's who owned the Wall Street Journal before, Dow Jones. Which, if you don't know, is pretty, hold on. It's pretty fascinating to learn the two names of the people. The newspaper's first edition was published in 1889 by three men, Charles Bergstresser, Charles Dow, and Edward Jones. So that's who Dow and Jones are. Dow Jones. It's Charles Dow and Edward Jones. Probably very rich dudes that were like, we got to convince poor people to make us richer. So 1889, the Wall Street Journal. Then in 2007, it was taken over by Barron's Financial Weekly in 1902, who passed it on to Clarence Barron. God, your last name's Barron. You gotta be wealthy. You ain't a poor dude then. And then it was passed on to the Bancrofts in 1928. They owned a majority stake. And then Rupert Murdoch's News Corp comes in. Takeover bid in 2007. That was initially rejected. They sold it eventually they sold it to Rupert Murdoch for $5 billion or $60 per share. The deal was $2.25 billion, a 67% premium over the announced market price. So Rupert Murdoch overpaid by more than half. Why? It's important for him to own media outlets to push his narrative. It's a brilliant move, but that's why he owns papers in the UK, in America. He owns Fox News. It's all pushing a certain narrative to make the wealthy people scared of the poor people and think they're undeserving, and that's why they're in their situation, and not truly address the things. So now that we all know Rupert Murdoch owns the Wall Street Journal, and anytime you pay for it, you're funding one of the richest people in the world. Murdoch is one of the most powerful media tycoons, born in Australia. Rupert Murdoch, did he just work really hard and earn his wealth? No, he inherited a newspaper company from his father in 1952. Took over the family business. He amassed a number of assets, world top papers, broadcasting companies, magazines, and digital assets. So all these people who are like, oh, the billionaires, they just pulled themselves up by the bootstraps. Unless it's normal to inherit a newspaper company, they didn't. They didn't work hard to earn that. I wonder if that cannon's still in working order. So, now that we know that backstory on Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, just so you know who these people are, and if you don't think it's propaganda, they are the people that January 3rd, 2023, and as far as I researched, and I looked real good and hard to who came up with the word, they are the first person, they are the first outlet they created this word. This word did not exist, and last year in January, they created this word. The word is from their article, "Get ready for the rich session." Get ready for the rich session. And then they break it down. Economic downturns are usually horrible for poor people, bad for the middle class, which doesn't exist anymore. It's a working poor, and an inconvenience for the rich. But if the economy enters a recession in 2023, we're going to have a rich session. That word did not exist before last year. Again, this is propaganda. This is, just watch any of George Carlin. He'll explain it to you. I don't have the time or the money to pay. I mean, Wall Street Journal is paywalled, so you got to pay the richest. They're not suffering, and that's why I'm talking about all this. Somebody shared this live stream with Gabe Rubin, who wrote the article to save money. Maybe you should skip breakfast. And now he's laid off. He wrote that article a year ago, and then the newspaper shut down the DC bureau where he worked, and you see all his coworkers posting stuff about how they're out of work and I need a job. Yeah, I get it. I've been out of work for 7 years. Jesus, calm down. Are you still going to write about how the economy's doing all right? This gives people a new perspective, okay? As much, again, I got to say this. I don't want anybody out of work. In fact, that's what I fight for. More people to be at work with better paying jobs so they could live. So this is exactly what I fight for. Plus, Jesus tells me, man, love your enemy. So Gabriel T. Rubin, I love you as long as you've learned a lesson, as long as you've turned from your ways. Like Jesus said, go and confront those who are sinning and talk to them personally and say, listen, man, you're doing it wrong. You're spewing propaganda for these evil, evil billionaires. These are not nice people. They ain't your friends. Proof is, the richest man in the world just shut down your brew. Put a bunch of people out of work. Okay? You're going to look at the reality of the situation? Again, it's not cost cutting, it's profit making. He's going to make more profits from doing this. And you were probably underpaid as it is. But unfortunately, sometimes, I wonder if that cannon works. Unfortunately, sometimes these people have a soft landing. They're not like the rest of us, where we stumble, fall, live in our car, have to find a couch to live on. We don't have parents. We can't survive. We truly don't know where our next meal is coming from. Meanwhile, this guy who wrote skip meals so you could save money might just go home to his parents' Manhattan penthouse or something, and he'll learn no lesson. Adorable dog coming up. Oh my God, what kind of dog is that? Black-mouthed cur? I don't know. Adorable dog warning. So Gabriel T. Rubin, are you going to learn a lesson? The mainstream media is much corrupted ever since the Telecommunications Act and the consolidation. And essentially, I mean, I worked in radio forever, so I watched this happen. I experienced it. And it's just about America's economy is an investment financial economy. It's not about industry. It's not about technology or green. Adorable dog. We only got the human. Wanted to see the adorable dog. Wonder if that cannon works. If you wonder where I am, I'm at a graveyard. It's got a cannon. I wonder if any of those people. I wonder what that cannon was used for. Did it make all those graves? How would you like that, to be buried in the spot where you're like, really? You put that here? That killed me in the revolution back in 17. I don't know. Too much going on in the brain. So welcome if you just joined in. Hit subscribe. Leave a comment what you feel about. Listen, I get it. Some people would be ruthless on the internet about this dude. Maybe I was considered a little ruthless because I said, don't worry, Gabe. You got advice for how to live now. Skip your meals. You'll save money. That's not being ruthless. Just serving him the dish he served us. The dish is a little cold. It's a year old, but you know what? But I hope, again, because I fight for people to be employed and for people that work a full-time job to be able to survive, I hope this is a learning experience for them. I'm praying, man. I'm praying that this dude sees all the people affected, sees his coworkers that might not have a comfy landing spot, and is like, this is wrong. This dude is a billionaire, and this is an epidemic in America where the American economy is strictly based on investments in companies and profits for shareholders, dividends to shareholders, and making a few people wealthier than ever while the rest of us suffer. under the guise of cost effectiveness, cost cutting measures. Bullshit. It's all bullshit. So when you hear that on the news, I stop watching the news because it's all they're all owned by there's like 5 companies that own every media outlet outside of the little mom and pop papers that may still exist in your town, and they're all feeding you the same turd, telling you it's delicious. And that's why I want people to wake up, man. That's why I'm doing this live stream 5 days a week. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, hit the little bell, the little alert notification, and you'll know every time I go live, because I'm going live 5 days a week. The class war doesn't take weekends off, but I am. Unless something crazy happens. Like today, I had other things to talk about, but today, as soon as I seen that Gabriel T. Rubin was laid off, I went, I gotta check this out. I'm really curious to see what else he says, because he's already begging for a job on LinkedIn. Please, friends, anybody that knows anything to keep me employed. No, how about, listen, as somebody who was unemployed for a long time, it teaches you stuff. Character. Just like all those rich people like to tell you, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It puts hair in your chest. It builds character. Number one, do they say that to women? I hope not. But number two, no, it doesn't. Lose your job. Lose everything around you. Live like Jesus. Just travel from town to town with no cash in your pocket, hoping the water turns to wine, and that will teach you some stuff. You'll start to feel compassion real quick. Some people turn bitter. Some people, again, don't have the bandwidth to understand. It's like why they don't want to teach about slavery or the history of black Americans in America, because a lot of these people, they just don't have the mental capacity to understand where we come from. They don't. Why do you think so many people believe in conspiracy theories? It easily gets them off the hook of having to deal with the reality of things. And not every time, there are some conspiracies that are true. I don't know. E.T. was a documentary, I think. So it sucks. I've watched people that don't, like the woman I was talking about. Look at that cannon. I wonder if it works. Like the woman I was talking about that I work with, who's walked away from me when I was talking about how many kids go hungry and what does it have to do with people working full time and not being able to survive, that she's telling me her kids are okay, like her kids are doing well. I was like, what is that? And I think she walked away because she knew what she was saying. What you're saying essentially is I'm selfish, my family's okay, I can't worry or fight for others. And that's what sucks about America right now. So many people are teetering, but just doing well enough that they're it doesn't concern. Just look at the Black Lives Matter movement, right? There were news reports about this movement's gaining so much traction because for the first time we're seeing white older white women come out and take to the streets. And that was ironically who my coworker was, but most of the time white older women, if they're not affected, they don't give a shit. And that's what we saw after the George Floyd protests. We saw people who had never taken part, who had actually started seeing outside of themselves, thinking outside of themselves, understanding the reality that certain communities go through on a daily basis, and they took to the streets. And that's how, look at the revolution, right? If you like history, you understand that when they had the first Continental Congress, or one of them, and they were meeting, they took a vote. They were all right, we're going to go to war. We're going to fight against the king. And there were some people that were nuh-uh, New York, I'm looking at you. They were this is insane. And a country divided, united we stand, divided we fall. A country divided ain't going to win, And there were redcoats, and there were people who were traitors, Benedict Arnold. But the strength is in the numbers when you can unite on a front. And that's what we really need to see, is people coming together and understanding that hey, maybe it's not just the price of things going up and people need to get educated or learn a trade to survive, But if we claim to be the wealthiest society and one of the greatest nations ever, people should just be able to like work a full-time job and live. And then there's people who are skilled and educated who should be able to work and like go on vacation a few times a year and not still be struggling. They shouldn't have to create words like rich session, which is a Wall Street Journal word. Of course they created that. They're full of bullshit, Rupert Murdoch. He just wants you to buy his shit. And how could you support him after this? Either way, if you are, they're shutting down entire branches. I'm not sure how good journalism gets with the less amount of journalists, but that's what they're doing. Again, sometimes like when I hear about what managers do or CEOs or board members, you think it's the dumbest thing. It's like it doesn't even make sense. Like in radio, like they would say, we value our talent. The talent are the lifeblood of the company. They're the heart of this company. And then they would get rid of them all and make the ones left do 4 times the work, have 4 jobs. It's like, you really don't value us because this makes no sense. And you call it cost-effective measures, but none of the millionaires are taking pay cuts. They're all still paying each other fat. It's only people on the front lines, the ones that you said are the heart and soul, the lifeblood of this company. So none of this makes sense when you just look at it as, I don't know, a human. Oh, I wonder if that cannon works. I wonder how that cannon's got to be from the 1700s, right? I know this is an old graveyard. How would you like to live like right here? I'm here because my favorite lotto store is right there. I'm going to get a lottery ticket. I know some people like lottery is a tax on dumb people, on poor people, whatever. Those people are rich people. They're usually not struggling. Listen, if I can spend $2, even if I don't win, which I haven't yet, at that point, the $2 is better spent on that. I can't get a gallon of milk. Definitely can't get eggs. Can't afford bread. What am I going to do with this $2? Buy a lotto ticket. This is not an ad for the lottery. Man, it's depressing out. You wonder why certain rates of things have jumped up. Like I said earlier, 1 in 5 kids are food insecure. There's 28 empty homes for every 1 homeless person. The leading cause of death. These are all the things like I like to talk about with people and see their reaction. See if they're concerned about our communities. The leading cause of death for people under 50 is opioid overdose. There's an opioid epidemic going on and you don't hear anything about it. And it's easily fixable. Like we need solutions to that, and we can do. How come it was so easy to pump it into our communities, but people refuse to fix it? Try to get somebody you love into a rehab. See how long that takes. See how much it costs. See how often or how local those rehabs are. I know they keep popping up, the for-profit ones, but seriously, it's depressing as someone who's gone through that process many, many times. And you think like this isn't set up. Well, look at our healthcare system, right? So the leading cause of death for people under 50 is opioid overdose. Remember that if the punishment for a crime is a fine, it's not illegal for the wealthy. I think I talked about the boy who's 15 who started a roofing job, which is illegal for 15-year-olds to do roofing, and he fell through the insulation 35 to 50 feet and died, and the company was fined $117,000. I personally think a 15-year-old's life is worth way more than that, but America doesn't. That company didn't. It was just a cost of doing business. Horrifying stuff that's happening, and unless people start to wake up and join together, and whether or not you're affected, that's the biggest thing, is like selfishness is people going, well, it doesn't affect me, so meh. I just go to work till I die. Meh. Why want things better? I remember in the 80s and 90s, like adults, not even your parents or uncles or aunts, like adults in general had like this thought process of like, I want it better for my kids. Where has that gone? I see all these people bragging about working 100 hours a week, 3 different jobs. And I'm like, your family must love you. What are you doing all that for? Oh, I'm doing it for my family. Don't you think that system is broken? If you don't get to see your family, you work extremely too much and you still can't survive and your kids aren't really going to get ahead, or one accident lays you out, one hospital bill, all of a sudden you got to get a 4th job? Jesus. I just want people to care outside of themselves. selfishness. It is rotting our society. And what kills me is like the fake Christians. And there are fake Christians. Let's get that out of the way. Joel Osteen, bullshit. Bullshit artist. Can't wait till the hounds of hell make his butthole pucker, you know? Oh, I wonder what the afterlife's like. There's a few people I'd like to see there. You know, Kurt, Tupac. There's also some people I'd just like to know what happens to him after. Is it like a Greek mythology? Where, what's that guy who kept having to roll the boulder up the hill? I don't know. Leave it in the comments. But you can only hope sometimes, right? Some people just need to learn a lesson. They need to see things from other people's perspective. They need to think outside of themselves. At what point, is enough enough? They just want more and more. It's greed. It rots their soul. Selfishness. It's such a bummer, man. It bums me out when I talk to people like that. And they're like, well, I'm doing okay. And they walk away. Because it's like, you're just okay with kids. I'm not okay with knowing some of my neighbors' kids are going hungry. Especially if their parents are working so much that, like, they're not there to raise their kids. Maybe they're not there when they get home from school or just whatever. I think this system is broken. It's fucked. But that's the very interesting thing about this Wall Street journalist who wrote the article to save money. Maybe you should skip breakfast. And listen, I've seen people say like, oh, that was a clickbait title. He didn't write it. It's an article about how the cost of everything gone up. He's the propagandist. I read up until they paywalled me. And his article says nothing about like how this is corporate greedflation driven, how, people aren't making, he's not ever defending the working class. Okay. The Wall Street Journal doesn't do that. So in my mind, I don't care if he wrote the article. His name's on it. You signed your name to it, pal. And you need accountability. Because it ain't cool. It ain't cool if you got to do it. If you got to skip meals to live. It's just not cool. I mean, where is that okay? Isn't that like the goal? Isn't that why people say like, everyone wants to come to America? Why? So you could work 40 hours a week and not live? Or live just a bare subsistence? That sucks, man. Who's okay with this? If you're okay with that, leave it in the comments. If you're okay with people working 40 hours a week, leave it in the comments. Say, I think they deserve to not be able to afford to live because XYZ. Usually what it is, but it's phrased in a different way, because they work this job. Because they're not educated. They don't have a skilled trade. And again, I must say, like, if we set the bar where everyone can afford to live, skilled jobs and educated jobs will be able to do way better than afford to live. Right now, we're seeing the people at the bottom not be able to afford to live, while the people who are skilled and have educated or have jobs with higher education degrees, that's why the Wall Street Journal created the word "recession," because they are the ones that are now just barely getting by. What the fuck is going on in this? What is going on? Make sure you subscribe, hit the little notification bell to get alerts for when I go live. And I wonder if that cannon works. I'm at a graveyard. Wonder if that cannon was put here by... I wonder if they thought it was funny, if it's like a eternal troll of the afterlife, where they're like, you know what we're going to do with this graveyard from the 1700s? We're going to put a cannon right there to remind them. No haunting, people. We'll activate it. It's a weird thing to have in a graveyard, right? Or am I cuckoo? That's a weird thing, right? I don't know. All right, thanks so much for checking out the class war. Solidarity to you if you're struggling. Solidarity to the working class, workers of the world unite. Gabe T. Rubin, who is now out of work after writing the article. I mean, he was a good lapdog for Rupert. He put that out there to save money. Maybe you should skip breakfast in a time where people are going hungry. Kids are going hungry. Welcome to the class war, Gabe. Hopefully you choose the right side, because there are sides. Billionaires ain't your friend. Okay? Hopefully you took that away from this. And if you don't, then You've made your decision. You made your bed. You're gonna sleep in it. And listen, some people that's their goal in life to bootlick as hard as they can to hope that these billionaires just keep them employed just enough to maybe take a vacation a year, to maybe get the kids into that school they wanted, to maybe be able to keep paying the mortgage things. And as long as nothing happens, as long as we don't have another crisis on our hands, then they can just get by until they die. Because like, what's the point, you know? All right. Thanks for checking it out. Hit subscribe, leave a comment about all this stuff. What are your thoughts? And I appreciate you. If you're going through a tough time, I hear you. Me too. So my heart goes out to you, sending you good vibes, praying for you. Leave it in the comments what I can pray for, what I can send good energy, some healing energy, manifestation. And please share this with people. Please, I'm trying my hardest to make YouTube become something. So 5 days a week, I'm here on the Class War, The Struggle live, 5 day weekdays. All right. So I appreciate you. Thanks. Peace.